Let's talk about appearance. If you never put them in the costumes, and you had Bruce Wayne in a sports jacket and a tie and a button-down shirt and gray slacks, swinging through the skies of Gotham at night and jumping down in front of a criminal and yelling boo, does the movie work? Pretty tough. The costume is everything. Got to have them. If you got Peter Parker climbing up and down buildings in his regular clothes, what's the point? Right? It's all about the costume. Right? So it's packaging. If packaging to products is so important, surely packaging of people is equally important. Right? Nito Cobain, who's speaking at our super conference, the joke about Nito at National Speakers Association is, you know, if you don't know who he is, he's easy to find. He's the guy in the pool in the afternoon in his three-piece suit. Because you ain't ever going to see him out of his three-piece suit. Every place he is, he's overdressed. Now, is that smart or not smart? Well, I'm going to tell you, he's probably taken more money out of that market than anybody else has over 25 years. Right? With no credentials going in, not much credentials coming out, but magnificent packaging from the beginning. Now today, Nito's a credentialed guy, right? Very successful consulting company, Great Harvest Bread Company's very successful, banks successful, university he's dean of is successful. But hey, I knew him when he wasn't credentialed. I knew him when he was starting a speaking and consulting career with nothing but a great brochure and a pinstripe suit. And people assumed a lot about credentials and right to ask for money. So costumes are pretty important. Donnie Deutsch's quote is interesting because he changed the costume as he went along through his career. So have I. At multi-day events, often you will see me start the first day dressed up more than I am by the third day. These are choices. These are thoughts. We shot this infomercial with Robert Wagner. And if you're really young, the guy in the Austin Powers movie with the eye patch. If you're a little older, you'll have a better frame of reference. If you're old enough, you think of him as the Cary Grant who wasn't. So Wagner shows up for rehearsal. Casually dressed, but elegant casual dressed. Like country club dressed. I watch him from inside the studio. Get out of the limo, get the jacket with the finger just right over the shoulder, walk in a certain way. A movie star walked in to our crummy little infomercial place to meet the client. Now, he already had the money. He's already hired. We're using him. He could just as easily have shown up in jeans and a t-shirt. It's only rehearsal. There's no cameras rolling. There's no other money, presumably, to get. We're all going to sit around a table and read a script. Why this? When we talked later, he said, that's what I sell. I sell the fact that I'm a movie star. People want to be with a movie star. You can't be a movie star and show up looking like their next door neighbor. It's a mistake. All right. In the sales training program I just recorded with Sydney, Sydney says exactly the same thing. You can't have somebody call up the most expensive escort service in New York and expect a call girl fantasy experience and have her show up looking like the girl next door. That don't work. So Wagner says, this is it. This is what I sell. He said, you pay me $100,000 to shoot an infomercial. Somebody else pays me $100,000 for 4 of us to go play golf together. Somebody else pays me $100,000 to show up at a party. Don't make any difference. My number's $100,000. I'll do anything for $100,000 pretty much. But this is what I sell. I sell the fact that I'm a movie star. And tomorrow, I'll be wearing my movie star uniform. His language, not mine. Blue blazer, gray slacks, blue shirt. You guys can have your choice of ties. I'll be wearing my movie star uniform. Well, I can tell you, many years ago, I had a client go to prison. And he was in prison for 5 years. And in the Ohio State penal system, nobody can visit an inmate for the first 6 months unless they are either family or they're clergy. I wasn't family and I wanted to visit. So I got me one of them $100 cards from the Universal Life Church and became a minister. And by the way, it's credentials for life, so I'm legally able to do weddings and funerals. I suggested to Carla that, you know, we say $50 and I do ours and I just jump back and forth from the 2 positions, but she wouldn't buy it. I thought it would have been funny. It turns out she has a limited sense of humor about this whole wedding thing. Yeah, somebody just said they all do. Yeah. So anyway, I get my Universal Life Church thing, right, that I bought. Now remember, this is a while ago. And one of the things in the little manual you get, it says, is ministers routinely get upgraded to first class for free. Airlines upgrade ministers if they have an empty seat. How about that? That's an interesting piece of information. Since I'm hauling butt back and forth from Phoenix to Ohio like every week to go visit this guy and I'm broke, this is a real useful piece of information here if this is real, right? Well, so the first time I try it, I get like nowhere, right? Then I give a little thought to this. Black suit, black collar, carry Bible. Boom! Upgraded. Same question, same card. Only difference is the costume and the assumptions made based upon it. Flew first class for free, back and forth all year long. I think I got turned down once. All I had to do is wear a black suit, carry a Bible. Got it out of that drawer in the hotel. Free. Not a story you want to tell a lot, probably. But here's Corda's line. Another book you ought to read. It's old. Michael Corda's book, Power. Very good book. Corda points out that costumes and other symbols vary in their significance based upon circumstance, context, and person being influenced, right? So, in certain cases, the costume's right no matter what. So Wagner's movie star uniform is his movie star uniform pretty much no matter what. But often, there's significant variance based on geography, industry, where they grew up, how old are they, what's their corporate culture, is there any specific message you're trying to communicate? So you got to think about the symbols you use in the context of who you are trying to influence, where in the country you or they are, what their background is, what they pay attention to, what is meaningful to them, not just like a big general statement. Think about all of your symbols. Again, this is old, but it's still like relevant from Corda. So this book goes back to when electric calculators were sort of new. Right? And it may be hard to find, I don't know, but it's still a book well worth reading. But his point was, if you got an electric calculator and you know how to use it, it's a symbol you're a low-level person, not a high-level person. The highest level people don't have computers sitting on their desks. unless they're copywriters. They got somebody that does that for them. I have several clients who have fake offices and real offices. They meet in the fake office, they work in the real office. The fake office is a set. I mean, it's an office built to look like the office should look for the role that they play. And then they never take anybody into the real office where they work. Right? It's not all that uncommon. So you want to think about what the symbols you wear, use, carry, what message that they convey. When I was young in this business, I carried a briefcase pretty much everywhere I went. Then I figured that out, stopped doing that, and started showing up empty-handed. Because it turned out that the most powerful person in the room was the person who wasn't carrying anything. So once I figured that out, I don't want to be the guy schlepping a briefcase. I don't buy new cars anymore very often because I don't care. But when it was important, because everybody saw my cars, I bought new cars all the time. And I bought new cars older than me, meaning I bought cars 50-year-old people buy, not cars 20-year-old people buy. So like I was driving town cars when I was 18, 19, and 20, not sports cars, because I wanted to be seen in a more serious car. So you want to give thought to the symbolism that you present and how it matches up with this reputation you are constructing. Place. We talked about this a little bit, but place is a real issue. I figured out that just going there put me at a disadvantage. I really figured it out. There's a guy in Ohio. It's my first year I had an ad agency business. There's a guy in Ohio, his name's Rick Case, and he's in the auto business. And he owns Rick Case Honda and a bunch of other brands. But at the time, his big thing was Rick Case Honda. And so I go to a meeting to get his advertising account. And his office is on the top floor of his dealership, above his dealership. And you come off of an elevator, and you walk the length of the office to get to him, which is the entire length of the car dealership, which is like forever. And you walk past a fountain and a waterfall and all kinds of crap and stuff from Japan, because of course he was selling Japanese cars. So there's swords and samurai shit. And way over there is Rick Case, who by the way is a little midget. And you get all the way to Rick Case, and of course you couldn't be more obvious about it, but it's still. So he's got his desk up on a platform, and he actually has the chairs in front of the desk with the front legs shaved a little bit versus the back legs. So you are sitting beneath him and you are sliding off the freaking chair, right? And there are no table. So if you've come in with a briefcase, you are either balancing it on your lap to get stuff, or you are working off the floor. I walked out of there and I said, this was not good. And the main reason it wasn't good is because I was there. That's the main reason it wasn't good, right? So I pretty much quickly figured out that just being in their place is not good. Who travels, whether it's across town, up the street, or across the country, matters a lot. Who goes to whom sort of defines from the beginning who's important and who isn't. Right? Meetings on the road. You come to me, I don't go to you. By making the prospect, it's a misspelling, by making the prospect travel to me, preferably at inconvenience, I gain all these benefits. So turf, how you handle place is important. Time is real important. Here's a biggie for you. The importance of the person is directly proportional to how hard or how easy it is to get them on the phone. If you want to telegraph that you are unimportant, answer the phone. That's all you got to do. Walk around with that damn cell phone and answer it every time it rings. Go ahead. All you're saying to everybody you're dealing with is, you are the least important guy on the totem pole. Because name a really important person and then go try and get to him. Go ahead. Pick somebody. You ain't getting to Trump. He's not answering the phone. You're going to jump through some real hoops to get to Trump. You're not getting to Greg Ranker at Guthrie Ranker. Go ahead. Try it. I don't care what you say. I don't care who you are. You ain't getting to him. Not on the first try. He's not walking around with a cell phone answering it. Not happening. So as soon as you figure this out, if for no other reason but posture, you would say, I got to make it hard for him to get to me. Now, there's practical reasons to do it as well. I mean, there's real time management issues. But there's posturing issues. Easy access is a statement of servitude. It comes from the in-service role. So people who believe they must be instantly, constantly, or quickly accessible view themselves as providing service. That's not our role. Our role is taking control of, getting compliance from, getting results for. Our role is not providing service. Right? The easy, instant, quick access is service role. And so this is a role issue. Last, easy and random access creates an expectation that can never consistently be met. So if you put it into a relationship, you are guaranteeing eventually you are going to have annoyed, frustrated, pissed off people, and you're going to lose them. I'd rather have them annoyed, frustrated, and pissed off at the beginning and deal with it then than deal with it later. It's an expectation that cannot be met. It can if you got one client. Maybe if you got 3. But pretty much as soon as you get to like 5 or 10 or 15, what happens if all 5 of them want to talk to you at the same time? You can't meet the expectation. So if you want to manage expectations, don't be creating expectations you can't meet. That's far worse than convincing them to accept a situation they don't like to start with. Far worse. Other access. Dropping by. They're just going to drop by. I hope not. Unless you're running a coffee shop. There you want them dropping by. Our businesses, we don't want them dropping by. I get it. We get it from people until they're educated. Oh, the next time I'm in Phoenix, I'll drop by. Well, go ahead, because first of all, I'm never there, and pretty much, Vicky's not there much, but if you want to drop by, you can look in the building. I mean, and even when I was there, it was like, you're going to do what? No, you're not. You don't drop by. Like, I got plans, you know? I mean, you don't want people dropping by. And I never received them when they did, even if I wanted to. Bad idea, right? Bad precedent. See, because you, first of all, again, you set up an expectation now you can't consistently meet. Remember, you create a reputation in part because of what they tell other people. So if they tell other people they can drop by and see you, other people want to drop by and see you. Pretty soon, everybody's dropping by to see you. You can't see everybody. You've created an expectation you can't meet. Okay? Oh, I'll just call up when I'm in town and we'll go to dinner. It's okay if you only know one person, whoever comes to town. It's no good if you know 20, because they tell each other. So now your reputation is somebody who at the drop of a hat will go to dinner. Now when you can't, you got really unhappy people. And it's really bad positioning. What important person do you know who you can actually just drop by and have them drop everything they're doing and go to dinner? No important person functions this way. Only unimportant people function this way. Billionaires don't do it to each other. Warren Buffett just doesn't land in Seattle on a whim and call up Gates and say, let's go play canasta. I'll be over in about an hour. That's not what they do to each other. Because probably Gates is doing something already. You know? He's like busy. Making money, spending money, saving the orphans, or whatever the hell he's doing now. But he's like doing something. Okay? They like playing. Okay? So how you handle this conveys a lot to people. Immediate or delayed response, same thing. If you think you are in the servant role, we're going to break in 5 minutes. If you think you are in the servant role, then you will want to respond to everybody quickly. From a client control standpoint, it's the worst thing you'll ever do to yourself, because you'll set up an expectation you can't possibly meet on a continuous basis. And then you will wind up with everybody unhappy and pissed off. And if it becomes part of your reputation before you rein it in, then as you become successful, you can't meet the expectation. It's hopeless. You can respond to one person quickly. Maybe today you can respond to that person quickly. I can't respond to anybody quickly today. I'm here. I haven't been able to respond to anybody for 4 days this week. Because 2 days ago, I had an all-day consultation with somebody. I don't let anything interrupt that. Not fair to the person giving me $12,800 to be interrupted. So if you're in a room with me, you're in a room with me. I'm not making phone calls. I'm not taking phone calls. I'm not checking my email. I'm not checking. Not fair to you. Harvey here flies all the way over here from London, gives me $12,800, sit in a room with me all day. Harvey deserves my undivided attention. Okay? So 2 days ago, I couldn't respond to anybody quickly. Yesterday, I couldn't respond to anybody quickly. Today, I can't respond to anybody quickly. Tomorrow, I can't respond to anybody quickly. Monday, I'm traveling from here to the other house. By the time I get home, so it's 5 days I can't respond. So even if I tried to, now we just hit a 5-day window where it's impossible. If my reputation was, boy, he responds to everybody quickly. Now, these 5 days are deadly. Because there's going to be a whole bunch of people who aren't going to get responded to quickly, and they're all going to be annoyed and irritated and aggravated and all of that. Okay? And then from a marketing standpoint, from a marketing yourself standpoint, that's the sales instinct now. So the servant instinct on the service side, the sales instinct on the other side. Oh my God, I got a lead. Oh, this person asked me for a proposal. This person asked me for a quote. I got to respond like right now. Worst thing you can do. Because that's only what unimportant people do. That's only what salespeople do. What Nero Wolfe does after the whole meeting's over and the $100,000 check is on the desk is he says, I'll think about it and I'll get back to you tomorrow. He doesn't whip out a contract. He doesn't grab the check and run over to the safe. That's not what important people do. Important people take their time. Now, when you're broke, or when you got like one client, it's harder to resist this impulse than when you're not. I admit it. But I always resisted the impulse with like nothing going on. Max Maltz talks about in psychocybernetics, the first patient who ever called, right? Well, your tendency is to say, come on in. How quick can you get here? Bad thing to say. So you have to resist these impulses. You have to resist the salesman impulse. Not that you don't sell, but you have to resist the salesman impulse to leap on red meat the minute you see it. And you have to resist the servant impulse to view what you do as service. Now, in some businesses, that's not true, by the way. Okay? I'm talking about our businesses. Bail bondsman, we want that guy to have a service attitude. Okay? If you're carrying a bail bondsman business card in your pocket, you kind of want that sucker to be available. Like right now, not 2 days from now, after you've been in the smelly place with Brutus for 2 nights. See, that's not good if you're a bail bondsman. Okay? But us, you got to think long and hard about this from a positioning standpoint, and even more important, from a client satisfaction standpoint. See, if you think the way to keep clients is to twist yourself in a pretzel, bend over backwards, run when called, leap at a moment's notice, be instantly in contact, you will not satisfy clients that way. You may temporarily satisfy them. You won't keep them for the long haul, because you won't be able to meet that expectation over the long haul. And if it becomes your reputation, you've had it. You've had it. Because the more successful you become, the worse it gets. Because now they all expect instant, quick, fast response. Why won't I write copy during a consulting day? In some cases, I could whip out a paragraph or two of copy for somebody. I could rewrite their ad in a consulting day. Why? Because they see it. And now they tell other people. And pretty soon it becomes part of my reputation. Oh, Kennedy can write copy at the drop of a hat. At the drop of a dime, he can write copy. He can rewrite your ad. He can do it right there in front of you while you wait. Copywriting while you wait. Bad idea. Variety of reasons, including the fact I can't always do it. It's an expectation that could not be sustained over time. Lowers value, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you really got to give a lot of thought to this.
I just have a quick question. When you're selling your program and you're taking a whole bunch...
You do realize that is your perpetual and constant pre-framing.
Yes,
which is very good. I just have a quick question. It's never a quick question, and it's never a simple question. But you preface every question you ask with, I just have a quick question. So, are you doing it on purpose?
No, I'm not. But
it's clever.
Good.
Keep doing it.
Okay. Now I have to stop and think about it. When you sell something and it's, for a really high ticket item, do you have a standard guarantee that you offer with it? Do you even bother to offer one?
I'll tell you something very interesting about guarantees. Harvey and I talked about this yesterday. The higher the caliber of the client and or the higher the price of the thing being sold, the less guarantees are necessary, important, or relevant. It's the exact opposite of what you would think. Guy buying a $300 item, for whom $300 is a significant amount of money. Mm-hmm. Great guarantees are almost essential to make the sale. Right? Guy buying a $3,000 item, for whom $3,000 is significant, guarantees not quite as necessary. Guy buying a $30,000 item, whether the $30,000 is significant to him or not, the guarantee is not particularly important in most cases, because even to be in a position to make a $30,000 purchase from you, he's kind of gotten past the point where he needs that kind of reassurance. Mm-hmm. And somebody making a $30,000 purchase for whom $30,000 is not significant cares even less about the guarantee than $3,000, even when $3,000 is insignificant. It's sort of like, the analogy is in the seminar business, a $300 seminar, you got to have food. You got to have coffee and donuts and rolls and juice in the morning, and you got to put out cookies in the afternoon, and you got to give them nice notebooks and pens when they get there, or they all complain and piss them off. At $3,000, you can get by with coffee and juice. At $30,000, you can give them water. They don't care. Now, you would think it'd be the exact opposite, but it isn't, because they don't care about that. That's not why they're there, right? So at $30,000, they're there to get the information. They'll tolerate anything. You sit on the floor. At $300, they're all complaining that the chairs don't have arms.
Yeah.
So the guarantee is less necessary. Right. The higher up the affluency ladder you go, the longer you've had the relationship, obviously, with the client, and the higher the price tag. Having said all that, the quick answer to your quick question is that no. Sometimes I've used them, sometimes I haven't. Sometimes I've sold anti-guarantee, with very strong language. If you need a guarantee, don't buy it. There is, so it is situational to a degree. I used to, like on consulting days for many, many years, my standard verbiage. Now it's only if somebody asks. Which is as rare as hen's teeth. But my standard verbiage was, you pay, whatever the fee was, that, and at the end of the day, one of three things happens. And one is, we had a good day, you got value. For one reason or another, we're not going to do anything together. We hug and, everybody's happy. Two is, you had a good day, we figure out something that I should be doing for you, in which case the fee for the day is fully credited towards the fee for the project. Or three, if you really think you wasted your time at the end of the day, I hand you your check back. I don't even bother saying it anymore, but I did for a long period of time. And probably over the years, 2 or 3 times handed a check back. And 2 or 3 times sent people home, gave them a check back to get rid of them. Well, I'm serious. Yeah. I mean, I had 4 guys. I'll never forget these guys. These 4 guys, and they didn't come out of NSA. They came out of ASTD. These 4 guys own a sales training company. And they bug me, and so they get a day of consulting, and in they come. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, they actually confess that their entire problem in life is that none of the 4 of them can sell, wants to sell, or even likes to sell. And so they want to know how to get their program sold without them having to do any selling. And I suggested they all get jobs in car washes. I gave them their money back and, paid for their airline tickets and sent them home. That hasn't happened in a long time either. I do think at the lower levels, you not only do you need them, but you like to lean on the guarantee to make the sale, right? At the higher and higher places, if you have it, it's almost an oh, by the way. And you shouldn't let yourself you shouldn't pressure yourself into guaranteeing where you don't need to or guaranteeing what you can't. Okay. And so much of what we do, so like I have gotten asked about copywriting services more than anything else because they're paying a lot of money and they're actually getting work product, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens if I give you $125,000 and you write all this stuff and we run the ads and they don't work? What's your guarantee? And the guarantee is there is none. Okay? First of all, there's too many variables I can't control. So they may run the ads, but did they answer the phone? They may run the ads, but did they send a package out? And so the answer, and sometimes I'm going to fail. And so the only guarantee in that arrangement is, because I'm fee plus royalty, so as long as the client's paying the royalty and testing, I'll keep tweaking. So basically, as long as you're continuing to spend money trying to make it work, I'll keep redoing it trying to make it work. But there ain't no guarantee it's ever going to work. And I can't recall losing one. I just can't. Okay?
I have a really quick question. My question is, now that I royally screwed it up and tricked off a couple of clients, how do I go back to now having a position of authority? I went to them, I did all these things, I think because I wanted to prove that, yes, I really do know your stuff. And look, I can do it. So now that, I believe I can do it, how do I get back to that point? Or should I just get rid of those 3 clients and then move on?
I don't think either is necessary. I mean, it's not like you've done it with 50. So how big of a nightmare can they be? There's only 3 of them?
Well, they're a nightmare because it's way less than what I should have charged them.
Oh, yeah, well, everybody's got those.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's got them. I got grandfathered clients who I shudder when I hear from them. Well, because they're paying so much less than anybody else is. I don't have many, but I got them. I mean, look, I don't think it's a big deal. I think you don't make whatever you now view as mistakes, you don't make them again. You don't go out of your way to stimulate additional business from these people. But you, of course, fulfill all your obligations. And you lean on them for non-monetary compensation, testimonials, be on a teleseminar, come present what we've done together at a chapter meeting. You know, you make a big deal out of the fact that they are paying less. Now, if they become a time problem or a management problem, then you got to sit down and have the come to Jesus talk. You know, I mean, look, you got me when I was new, and you know that's fine, and you're paying X, but everybody else is paying Y, and they're not. They can't get. You know, here's the rules of engagement that they're operating under. Here's the rules of engagement you got to operate under, and if you can't operate under those rules, then we should part company as friends. By the way, 9 out of 10 times when you have to have that conversation, 9 out of 10 times they repent, apologize, and get back into good behavior. So 9 out of 10 times when it becomes the equivalent of, show me your exercise, you didn't do your exercise, you can't be here as a patient, they start doing the exercises. So 9 out of 10 times when you have to sit somebody down and say, you know, hey, look, you know, you can't be sending me 12 faxes a day, each one with a separate question on it. You know, you can't, this is not the way we play. And if this is the only thing that will make you happy, then we need to find you somebody who will work with you on that basis, but it can't be me. 9 out of 10 times, they whip back into shape. They've never, in many cases, had anybody say that to them before, you know, not for a long time. So, I don't think you got a horrible problem, you know.
I, too, have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
This one is about costuming and how the costuming thing with the Joel Bauer suit and playing that game in Thompson Falls, Montana, where the chamber has 27 members. And it's a farming and logging community.
It's exactly the point I made earlier, is there's geographic, you know, there's geographic and cultural differences that have to be considered. Now, if you want a big thumb rule, the big thumb rule is you are better off being overdressed than underdressed for every environment that you are in. However, that implies cultural differences, right? So if, for example, if you go to let's say $1,000 a plate political fundraising thing in Los Angeles, California, okay? Everybody's going to be dressed. And if the invitation indicated formal or business attire, 9 out of 10 guys are going to be in tuxes. All right. If you go to the same $1,000 plate dinner with the same invitation in Cleveland, Ohio, 30% of them are going to be in tuxes. Everybody else is going to be in suits, and some people are going to be in sport coat jackets and ties. So there's geographic adjustments, right? And so you don't want to look so far out of, where are you?
Montana.
Yeah, you don't want to look so far out of Montana that, you know, it's a city slicker from the east, or, you know, he's an arrogant moron, or, yeah. But, so first of all, there's obvious value of clothing and shoes and symbols and so forth. I mean, there's a difference between what you buy at JCPenney and what you buy at, you know, Neiman's, even in casual clothes. So there's a quality difference that is apparent to people and will actually make a difference about how you feel, you know, internally. Then so if they're coming to the meeting in, you know, jeans and flannel shirts and jackets, you may want to be in khakis and, you know, a Glazer Kennedy inner circle shirt and a nice sport coat. I mean, that may be as far as you want to go.
I've been to Montana senatorial receptions where half the people in the room were in jeans.
Yeah. So you want to be above it, but not so far above it that it is ridiculous. I also think you want to be consistent. So, you know, you want to sort of have your movie star uniform or 3 uniforms that are sort of consistent for you. I found some very interesting things about it. Like as a speaker, I found that when I lived in Phoenix, and much was made of Bull and Phoenix and all of that, even if I was speaking in New York, if I wore street shoes instead of boots, people were disappointed. Okay? They expected the boots. I can tell you categorically on the platform, you sell more in a suit than you do in a suit, in a sport coat, shirt, and tie. And you definitely sell more with tie than without. I mean, there's some profound generalities that cover everything. But then there's these cultural, geographic differences. And I absolutely think it's reasonable to, like Phoenix in July, nobody's wearing a tie. I mean, they're just not doing it. And hardly anybody's wearing a jacket. So now, in many cases, you're going to something, no tie, no jacket. But boy, you better make sure now that the shirt's a really good shirt.
Okay, thank you.
No one else? Okay. Sort of an extension of that is, I'm on page 38, for those of you keeping score. Again, viewing selling as well as the delivery of what it is that we do has performance art. Then control of environment, staging, timing, all of these things become important. And in all businesses, hardly anybody thinks through these things much. Charlie and I have talked about, and I don't remember now where you told me the research came from or where I saw the research, but and there's a little variance by age, but in a dental office, you can leap in and correct me if I screw this up, but I think I got it right. In a dental office, and for that matter, most medical offices and most chiropractic offices, there tend to be three ways that patients are brought from front to back. Right? One is the person behind the counter yells out, Mr. Tucker, the doctor's ready for you in the back. And Tucker gets up and puts his magazine down and schleps over to the door. Right? Another is she stands up and comes around the counter and still yells, Mr. Tucker, the doctor's ready for you in the back. And Tucker puts his magazine down and schleps over, and she opens the door for him to go into the back. The third is she comes all the way out into the reception area, comes over to Mr. Tucker's side, and says, Mr. Tucker, the doctor's ready for you in the back, escorts Mr. Tucker to the door, opens the door, and hands Tucker off to whoever is on the other side of the door. So any one of those three things can happen in the office. The satisfaction level of the patient, the acceptance of recommendations level of the patient varies profoundly based on which one of those three things happens. Now, in chiropractic, we always taught a particular office tour. So, for example, one of the things we always taught chiropractors for their $30,000 was how to do a good office tour. And that has to be customized a little bit for each office, but fundamentally, you're going to take this person around the first time to every place as if you were taking them a tour of Disney World. And there's a script for it, and there's signage for it. I did it. One of the first things I did when I took over a manufacturing company, General Cassette, where we had clients come and we sold them, is we created the General Cassette Tour. And we took you around from machine to station and showed you how your cassette program was going to come to fruition. And we had big signs above every machine. And we had really crappy machines, but we had good signs. And so here, this is the triple XYZ TMZ duplicator with 5 built-in quality control Duma fludges, and here's what happens here. And so we had a tour. And we put the staff, even the manufacturing people, in nice little jackets with logos on them, so they look more like Starbucks people than, illegal immigrants, which is what they were. So we dressed them up, we dressed the place up, we created a script, and we had 3 or 4 people who knew the script. The signage kind of controlled the script, and off the person went on the tour. Same thing in the chiropractic office. So they take them, here's the restroom, here's the therapy room, and then there's a sign on the wall about the therapy room and the 5 machines, and there's testimonials up on the wall, nice framed testimonials with pictures of patients that match each thing that you are showing them on the tour. Now, this is a very choreographed event. This has to happen in a certain way. The person should be on this side, not on this side. When I first learned selling, I had 2 sales training experiences. One was the year I worked as a book rep for Price Stearns Loan. They hired me, they handed me the catalog, and they handed me the computer printout of everybody that was in my 5-state territory and said, go get him, Bubba. And then 2 weeks later, about a month later, they sent in one of their other sales guys to ride around with me for a week, who pretty much, he taught me how to cheat on your expense account, how to pick up really drunk, unhappy married women in Holiday Inn bars, and how to get an illegal credit card machine so you could document for your expense account that you were somewhere that you had never gone. Those are the 3 things he taught me how to do. That was their sales training program. I'm not quite sure they fully understood the sales training program that they were actually delivering, but that was their sales training program. There was no training of when you walk into a professional purchasing agent's office at Macy's and sit down to present to him. There was no training of what do you do? How do you enter the room? Where do you sit? None of that. Okay? And my guess is nobody had ever given any thought to it. And consequently, everybody did it differently. I ultimately, within a year's time, had all that worked out in my head and was doing a consistent thing over and over and over again that worked. The second sort of sales training experience I had was fairly early in multi-level. And in the multi-level experience, our modus operandi was you brought them to hotel meetings. Pros put on the meeting. And so you would bring your guests. And at best, you're going to have 1 couple or 2 couples. Well, all that was now choreographed and taught. So if I have 2 couples, and we're going to sit there, and the presentation's going to... Well, when the presentation's over, I got to close 2 couples simultaneously. And I got to get each of you to fill out forms and give me money and get a kit. Well, the most important choreography about all that is where you sit. You got to sit between the 2 couples so that without getting up, you can scoot your folding chair out at the end and scoot it around to face the 2 couples without ever getting up. Because if you don't get up, they don't get up. But if you get up, they get up, and you lose control of them in a hot second, and you can't keep control of 2 couples. You may be able to keep control of 1, but the other one wanders off. If you scoot your chair right and spin it out in front of them, they don't get up because you didn't get up. Well, you got to practice that. First of all, you got to know it, then you got to learn it, then you got to practice, then you got to teach it to the other people who are doing it. I mean, we practice the proper handshake. There's a proper way to do a handshake, and there's an improper way to do a handshake, and you get different results from different things. So all that was scripted, planned, strategized, taught, and it was extremely helpful. Hardly anybody thinks through their whole process this way. When I spoke at the Peter Lowe events, I was always the last person on after the last famous guy or woman. So the last famous person is leaving, and then early on we introduced me, and that took too much, and too many people left. So then I'd been introduced earlier. So now there's just an offstage announcement that says, literally, as George Bush or his colon or whatever is walking off, there's an offstage announcement that says, and now here's Dan Kennedy, and boop, there I am. Right? Well, I quickly figured out there's a big difference between waiting until President Bush is down the steps and coming up the steps before President Bush can get down the steps. A couple of reasons. One, speed. The other is I'm seen with President Bush. Okay? And I get to shake hand, pat on shoulder, great job, and go past him out to do my thing. Well, that's a much different experience for the people who are standing up, thinking about leaving, etc., than the other way. Now, the Secret Service, by the way, doesn't like it when you're doing it with an ex-president, but nevertheless, it's important. So you think all this through again, at a seminar, at a coaching meeting, at a, what works best for you. You don't do it by random if this is performance. You plan it, you script it, and again, to use the word, you choreograph it. Okay? Now, again, hardly anybody thinks it through. So if we go into a chain, I don't know, if we go into an optical store chain, or we go into our client now, Miracle Air, or whatever, and we go into 10 stores today, everything's going to be different in all 10 of them. The way we're greeted is going to be different. How they handle us physically is going to be different. How they shake hands, don't shake hands, when they shake hands is going to be different. One's going to be using a metal clipboard, the other one's going to be using a leather folder. One's going to sit across from the person, somebody else is going to sit next to them. Well, see, all that should be, there's one way of doing that that's more effective than all of the other ways, and all that should be figured out. And in a multi-person or multi-unit business, it should be institutionalized. And I mean, in the fire alarm business, I have a client in the fire alarm business, and when the fire alarm salesman arrives at your home, he walks in with the DVD thing now. He used to drag this big projector in. Now he walks in with the DVD thing, and he walks in with the stuffed Dalmatian dog under his arm, which is the gift with appointment. Okay? There's an enormous difference in the sales results depending on what you do with that dog. Mm-hmm. I mean, how you give it to them, and if there are kids, you bring your closing average up enormously. If there are kids, if the salesperson takes the dog like this, drops down to one knee, introduces the dog to the kids, there's a script for it, right? And presents the dog to the kids. If you don't do that, if you plop the dog down on the floor, or you sit down at the dining room table before you, it affects numbers. So now the trick is to try and get 500 fire alarm sales guys to all do it right. But all you're trying to do is get you to do it right. So your job is to figure out in every one of your situations what the best performance is, then do it. This is, by the way, the consulting and coaching business that Sydney and I are developing, because she is intuitively brilliant at it. And identifying what the choreography ought to be of a face-to-face sale. And again, hardly anybody gives this any thought. I've always given it a lot of thought. What's the entrance? What should the entrance look like? For example, there's a reason I never wanted to be picked up at airports. And it's not that I want to stand there and wait for a cab or try and find my own way to the hotel. It's not really that I'm antisocial. I am, but that's not primarily. I mean, the reasons I don't want to be picked up at the airports is because I can't control the impact, the impression, the environment of that. So my first interaction, if I'm going to give a speech, my first interaction with the client is now under conditions that don't work for me. I want to control that meeting, not have God knows what happening during that meeting. There's the whole issue of what you are seen doing. Okay? Now, this is relatively rare. Okay? For example, this event. Number one, not trying to sell you anything. So that changes things dramatically. Okay? Number two, we got a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. But most of the time, you would not see me carrying my own bag into the room. Not because I'm above carrying bags. It's not, a prima donna thing. I mean, I do more ugly, gritty manual labor work than most people would imagine. It's not about that. It's a bad message. It's under there's this famous story that ends with the punchline of Sinatra turning to everybody and saying, Frank Sinatra doesn't move pianos. And there's certain things important people do and certain things important people don't do, and certain things unimportant people do and certain things unimportant people don't do. And so you got to think about what message everything you're seeing, doing, sends. I hear somebody, oh no, that's somebody sawing. I thought somebody was laughing. Where you sit, coaching environment, pretty important. How you sit. To sit down at their level, that sends one kind of message and it sets one kind of environment. Are you going to sit up here? That sends a different kind of message, sets a different kind of environment. In an event like this, I don't want to be up on a platform. Right? That distances, it gives me a little more control, by the way, but it distances me from you. I want this to be dialogue-y as much as possible, etc. But were I here to sell you a $20,000 something, I'd want to be up on a platform. And I might still use the stool, but I don't want to be up on a platform. So your physical environment in which you work with people is important. When you enter rooms is important. Before everybody, after everybody, with everybody. Do you stand in line at the buffet with them? Do you bump the line? Do you not eat at the buffet at all? All of these things are important. When someone... I went upstairs and had lunch with Bill. It was more about a need to have lunch with Bill than it was posturing. If I had stayed down here, I would have bumped the line. In answer to your question, if I had stayed down, I would have politely bumped the line, and I would have been, funny about it, but I would have bumped the line. Okay? Now at Platinum, when there's only 20 of us, and we have a different kind of relationship, I'll stand in, I don't care, I'll go last, I'll stand in, I'll just take my place in line with everybody else. But here I would have bumped the line. Standing in line with everybody else sends the wrong message. When someone comes to my house for a consulting day, my Ohio house, and there I have all kinds of stuff. Here, they rent a suite at the Hyatt that's a walking distance from my condo, and we meet in a hotel. But at my Ohio house, I have all my stuff there because it's where I work, right? Well, I can, of course, prepare if I know that Charlie Martin's coming for a day of consulting. I know kind of what we're going to talk about, and I know what might be interesting for him to see, and I could go round it all up ahead of time and have it in the conference room. That doesn't have near the impact of me going and hunting something down for him while he is there and dredging it out of archives and files, killing the deer and dragging it back into the room for him while he's there. That has much more impact. Okay? Consequently, I don't go find the stuff ahead of time. It has more impact if I go hunt for it while he's there waiting for me to hunt for it. It has the added benefit of not requiring preparation for consulting days. But setting that aside, okay, it's just like one thing may have a time management benefit that also has a positioning and a posturing reason. This, too, has a practical benefit. I don't have to prepare, right? And if I prepare, I'm going to round up 8 or 10 things, and maybe he really only winds up seeing 3 of them, so now I get a bunch of preparation for nothing. This way, I'm using his time that he's paying for to do the hunt, not my time on the day before that I'm paying for to do the hunt, and he likes the hunt. Okay? Remember, the job of the performance is to delight the audience. Okay? So he's more delighted because he saw me go into the back room and he hears drawers being slammed and I'm in there killing the beast and, oh, look, I found it for you. Didn't know if I was going to be able to get it, but here it is, right? Well, they like that better. So why not do it? It's part of the performance, right? And sometimes I know where it is, but I go in the back room and I stand there and I count 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,000, and then I come out with what it is that I found. Right? Now, again, as I was preparing for this and thinking through these things, I mean, I do that now. This is the first time I've consciously thought about it and therefore enunciated it in a long time. I do it unconsciously by rote. And it's been so long since I had a conscious thought about it, I can't even tell you when I didn't do it, when I started doing it. I don't know any of that anymore. But I do know that there's a different impact from both ways. I have neatly organized everything ahead of time, and people aren't impressed. But they're really impressed if they see me go find it. So, better they should see me go find it, right? It's the same thing as if I could write them a headline right then and there, and I do it, that's not as impressive as if they think I agonized after they left and lost sleep over this and then fax it to them the next day. Well, they're more impressed. It's the same 3 minutes. It's just that they didn't see the 3 minutes. Now, if the 3 minutes was like really impressive, you know, if like I waved my hand and the headline came out of the hand, well, then I'd want to do it in front of them, right? Because that's pretty cool. But just seeing me think of it and write it on a piece of paper, that ain't real cool, right? So now the mental picture they have of, oh my God, he sweated all night over this, and he dug around in his files, and he found this, and now he sent it to me after the fact. See, that has more impact, right? It has even more impact if they wait 3 or 4 days to get it. Right? Leads us to 40. This is a real important statement. You cannot abruptly or occasionally exercise control, right? Like you can't have no bedtime with the kids for months and then because Aunt Jane's staying over, try and impose bedtime. No good. Lots of luck. Okay. So we either have control or we don't have control. We can't not have control and occasionally get it in times when we really need it or want it. So you sort of build control continuously from the beginning all the way through the the relationship. So in selling, right, we exercise control in many cases by when we put the paperwork in front of them or how we have part of it filled out ahead of time for them. Larry Wilson's company, sales training company, I can't think of the name now, but they did some research and in controlled tests. And I don't know how valid the tests were, but I buy the results, so I'm going to say the tests are valid. People are 50% more likely to buy something, to accept a purchase, if the paperwork is partially filled out for them in advance than if the paperwork is blank to start with. Well, once you hear it, of course, it makes perfect sense, right? Especially if it's been filled out like by hand and the paperwork is worthless if they don't use it. Now they feel like guilty and there's a sense of obligation to use the paperwork because somebody went to all the trouble to fill out the paperwork for them, as opposed to starting with a blank thing. So salespeople have lots of ways that they can take control, right? So in coaching meetings, group environments, relatively small group, you can exercise control by place, right? Do they come to you? Do you go to them? Do you have it in a neutral location? What is the neutral location like? How is the seating arrangement made, etc. So, for example, in my platinum group, I've had as few as 12. I've had as many as 20. And this year, I think we have 21 coming to the meetings. Okay? At 12 and 15 and 16, you can do all that in 2 days with a boardroom setup. Everybody's sitting at a table. Everybody takes their turn and talks. Everybody joins in. You can play traffic cop enough to get through that. At 20 people, you can't do it. You won't be able to exercise enough control. So the platinum meeting done with the bigger number, everybody's at a boardroom table or a horseshoe table, but I'm up in front with a stool and a table. There's an extra stool, and really we're doing hot seats. Each person comes up, we do their hot seat, they go back and sit down. It gives me more control over the schedule, the person, the interaction. It's easier for me to play cop. Now, I'd rather do it the other way, but I got too many people, so now I got to do it in the most effective way for the number of people that I got. Rules. You've got to have rules. Everybody's got to know the rules. And by the way, you can't like tell them the rules at the beginning of the year and then forget it. They got like a lot on their minds, and remembering the rules isn't one of them. It's real low on their priority list. Also, the more successful the people are that you have in a coaching environment with you, of course, the less likely they are to follow rules, because one of the reasons they're successful is because they don't follow rules. And now you're trying to get them to follow rules. It's, you know, and by the way, encouraging them not to follow rules and anything else they do, but to, by God, follow your rules. So the rules better be pretty damn clear, and they better be reminded of them every single time. So I got people who have been in Platinum for 10 years. They still get a memo before the meeting, reminds them of the rules. You know, they can be here on time, don't be late, don't leave early, don't bring a cell phone. You got to do it, right? You got to do it. And if you do not have clear rules and you do not remind them of them, your coaching environment will disintegrate a little bit each time until you suddenly realize there's chaos. And putting that genie back in the bottle ain't easy. Order. You got to think through what's going to happen, like how many minutes this is supposed to take, how many minutes this is supposed to take. You kind of got to have a little schedule. You kind of got to know where you're supposed to be. And you got to enforce everything. And mostly, group coaching meetings mostly are about playing traffic cop. I mean, they're about keeping one person from dominating the conversation over others, about encouraging the timid to get in the game. Gee, Stephen, you've been quiet for the last hour. You must have some thoughts about this. And then you shut up, and now Stephen will talk, right? And so you got to get in, and you got to be aware, oh, shoot, Stephen hadn't been involved for the last 2 hours. Well, Stephen ain't going to be here next year if Stephen isn't involved. Now, if you make him involved too much, then you won't keep him either, because different people want to be involved at different levels. But he's got to be involved a little bit. He's got to have his moment in the sun a little bit. He's got to get to give his opinions a little bit. So you're traffic copping. You're keeping anybody from dominating. You're keeping an argument from turning into a full-blown, like, fight where nobody likes anybody anymore. You're keeping the thing from turning into a bitch, moan, and complain session. A little bit of that's okay. You got it, but not a lot. You're watching the clock, so you're making sure. So you can't have the last 2 people participating in your coaching group have 8 minutes apiece, and everybody else had an hour. All right? You can't have them like cheating, so somebody's leaving early all the time or out making phone calls while somebody else is taking a turn. So that's no good. So I do stuff like, you know, if somebody's starting to abuse that, now we start for a meeting until everybody gets their behavior back in shape. We draw for who goes in what order. And you don't get to volunteer and I don't pick you. Or whoever left early last time, you're last this time. So you leave early again, you don't get a turn at all, and you're last. I mean, so you're playing cop. You know, you're making sure that everybody's having a good experience, that the game is well played by all, right? In a client relationship, your biggest building blocks of control are mostly ones we've already talked about. The fact that they come to you rather than you go into them. That you control their access. Again, that you have rules. You got to have rules for one-on-one clients too. They got to know what the rules are. So you can't expect them to behave well if you haven't told them how they're supposed to behave. And you can't call them on it when they behave badly. So, like, I tell people to send me stuff by Federal Express. See, I mean Federal Express. I don't mean Pony Express. I don't mean DHL. I don't mean UPS. I don't mean Priority Mail. Damn it, I mean Federal Express. Especially the handful of clients who have access to send stuff directly to me in Ohio when I am there and working on their stuff rather than through Vicki in Phoenix, because where I get my stuff in Ohio, only Federal Express manages to get it there. The DHL guy can't find the place. The UPS guy, some days he finds it, some days he doesn't, who knows? You know, Federal Express, the guy knows where I'm at. Okay? So I tell everybody Federal Express. Now I have the right, when some nitwit sends it the other way, to send them a fax and say, what part of Federal Express didn't you get? Okay? I said FedEx. Your problems now exist because you couldn't follow instructions. But if you didn't give them the instruction to start with, you can't really be aggravated at them, and you're not exercising control. Now, by the way, if I had no practical reason for what I just said, the very act of specifying precisely the way or ways in which you can deliver things to me is an exercise of control, even if I had no practical need to do it. It would be smart to do it. Now, in this case, I have a practical reason to do it. I even have like sort of a necessity to do it. But even if I didn't, it would be smart to do it because I'm building blocks of control. Right? And so if they have to go through a process, and they got to think to themselves, okay, I'm going to Dan's meeting. How am I supposed to behave at Dan's meeting? Which they never have that thought about any place else they're going. And okay, I got to communicate with him. How am I supposed to communicate with him again? Right? And they never have that thought about anybody else. Who has the most control over them? I got the most control over them. Right? Because they're having to modify their behavior all the time to conform to my rules. Makes it easy to impose a new rule, by the way, too, if you've already had rules. It's real hard to impose a new rule if you haven't had any rules. Contracts. We're going to talk about this in depth later, and when I show you sample documents. But here's the big it about this. Paper. Don't do anything without paper. Okay? Verbal, it's amazing to me how many times I'm sitting with people who are in complex relationships. They're halfway into projects. They're partners in businesses, and now they got problems, and they got no contracts. Nothing. I said, you have got to be kidding me. Now we got nothing. No contracts. They won't sign up for pest control at their house without a contract, but $1 million business deal, oh yeah, we've known each other for years. We can work out anything. Contracts. And the contracts include the rules, the behavior, and so we'll get into sample docs. I'll show you some samples. And delays in response. Another part of this is making people dependent upon you. Many of you have heard me say Werner Erhard, who started EST. I asked Werner, give me the truth about EST in 5 minutes or less. And he said, we preach independence and we breed dependence. That's EST. Well, to a great degree, all of our businesses are the same. Okay. We want them to feel dependent on us. All the time teaching them all of the ways they can go and be independent. And now here's the corollary to this, which is really important to understand, is in just about anything you would consult with people about, you would be delivering to people in coaching, you would be teaching to people. After a year, they got the mechanics. The mechanics of whatever it is you do and whatever it is that I do ain't that tough. Okay? They're really not that complicated. Direct response isn't that complicated. For example, for me, hey, you need an offer, you need a story, you need a headline, and you need somebody to put it in front of who it might have a chance of being interesting to. That's about it. The rest of it's all nuance and teaching the same principle with a different story, and and your stuff's the same, whatever it is you do. So they're not dependent on you for your core content or your core competency very long. They have to be dependent upon you for other reasons. The three big hits are here. It's helpful if they believe that you're the only one who can do what you do. We have a guy on racehorses. We have a guy who rebuilds hooves. This is kind of important, by the way, because no feet, no horse. Okay? Bad feet, horse won't race. And their feet have a lot of problems because there's however many pounds there is on these little tiny feet. And so they crack sometimes. And they literally crack all the way up the hoof. Now, there's a handful of things you can do. You can use metal and you can put them together. There's some glop you can use. But there's this one guy, and he's got his own proprietary glop. And he's a magician at this. To watch it is a performance. And it takes like an hour and a half for him, and he comes and he rebuilds the hoof with this glop. And ultimately, the hoof grows with the glop on it, and then eventually you cut the glop off, and bingo, you got a foot back. Okay? Now, the stuff's pretty miraculous, but he's even more miraculous. And the routine he goes through, I've now concluded the routine is all for show. Because it's the same glop on the same hoof every single time. He's only got one glop. The procedure's the same. I've watched it 3 times. But the hour and a half, the first hour is this diagnostic bullshit thing. He's walking, he's picking the hook, he's measuring this, he's measuring that, he's making little notes in his notebook. I'm watching this, I'm thinking, what the hell is he doing? And ultimately, he does the same thing every time. His name's Rusty. And he's about 5 times as expensive as any other option you can do for this. I mean, it's like $1,000 a hoof. You get a cracked hoof, you call him. And you leave a message. Because he goes from track to track. Right? And you can get him for like $5,000 if it's an emergency. And he'll drop what he's doing and come. Otherwise, you might wait 3 or 4 days until he's back in Ohio from Pennsylvania, or he's in Pennsylvania instead of in New Jersey or whatever. Sometimes there's a waiting list. Sometimes I can't get to you for 2 weeks. He'll do this in the meantime. Okay, the guy is like booked beyond belief. We all believe he's the only guy who can do that. Now, I've watched him do it. I don't know I couldn't do it, but I think probably any blacksmith who paid attention could figure it out 2 or 3 times. And he'll sell you the glop. You can go to the website and buy the glop, but we are all convinced he is the only guy who can do this and get it right. So we will wait, we will fly him in, we will do what we got to do to get him. It is useful to have people believe that. It is not particularly difficult to have people believe that. They actually want to believe that. And that's important to understand. See, now they found you. They got you. They want to believe you're unique. That's like important to them. So they pretty much will convince themselves you're the only one who can do the one thing that is your greatest core competency if you just sort of encourage them in it. But once they believe it, they're very dependent on you. My experience at Guthy-Renker is sort of interesting. The first thing I did for Guthy-Renker was I did some tweaks to the offer of the Think and Grow Rich infomercial, which was their first show. And it was dying. And it had a good run, but it was starting to do this. And I did a couple things, and it went back up like this. And it continued for a period of time, and everybody made a lot of money. The next show they did was Personal Power 1, the first Tony Robbins show. And I didn't do much. But I rewrote the CTA, and I made a couple of suggestions, and I was on the project team getting paid consulting fees to issue opinions about everything from which of these 3 testimonials do you like to, that sort of stuff. Well, so Think and Grow Rich came back to life. And Personal Power was, of course, a huge hit. Quite frankly, Personal Power would have been a huge hit whether I'd been dead, alive, here, not here, make any difference. Personal Power was a huge hit because they surrounded him with celebrities. They did a pretty good show. And Tony's a phenomenal salesperson. However, having done those 2 things and had 2 successes in a row in a field in which they had no experience or expertise, they come to the conclusion that I'm the rabbit foot. We don't dare do a show without Kennedy. We're not exactly sure what the hell contribution he's making. But we're pretty sure we ought to at least rub the master on his head before we send it off to the stations. Now, they wouldn't enunciate it that way, and I wouldn't enunciate it that way in front of them, but fundamentally, that's like where we were. Okay? So I'm like the rabbit foot guy. So for a long time, nothing happened over there without me like blessing it. In many cases, I didn't do much, but I got paid to, yep, that makes sense. Rub it here. Go. Okay. Well, hundreds of thousands of dollars, many hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nobody wanted to do a project meeting without me there. Half the time, nothing happened in the project meeting. Meetings are meetings, you know. 12 people go, they eat bagels, they eat fruit, everybody sits around and talks, nothing happens. You know, you could just as easily have sent me a recording of the project meeting. I could have looked, no, got to be there. We'll reschedule the project meeting so you can be here. You got to be here. Why? Because they want to be sitting there, right? Because they convinced themselves that somehow, some way, I was doing something that nobody else could do. Okay? That's a dependency issue. Okay? Second one, there's something mystical about what you do. So Harvey Dent's proprietary software that he uses to calculate the trends thing, your proprietary analytic process for finding the 8 unexploited opportunities, your interview strategy, your something, and it's why they can't see you do everything that you do. It's a mistake, like, to be visible doing everything. Because a lot of what most of us do, if you see it, ain't nothing to see. Right? It's not all that impressive. Okay? So you only want to really see an impressive stuff. Now, impressive to them, by the way. So, you know, running a coaching meeting to the participants, I mean, that's a pretty impressive thing. You know, but you can't let them see everything. And so you got to go away to your secret cave where they cannot come, and something behind the rock has to happen, and you come back out of the secret cave with the answer or the thing or the work product or whatever, and they have to really kind of wonder what's going on in that secret cave, but they can never see it. You can't ever let them in the secret cave, because in most secret caves, tain't nothing there. You know, and it's a big disappointment to come in the secret cave and find out there's a recliner, you know, and there's a couple old Three Stooges movies and a DVD player. I mean, that's a big disappointment to everybody. You know what I'm saying? So there's got to be something mystical about what you do to them, not in reality. And third, this is kind of important, there always has to be the thought that there's a next. I mean, dependence is bred by the fact they can't leave because there's a next thing coming. You're going to come up with something. Something at that next meeting is, this is going to happen at that next meeting. And it's fabulous, and it's never happened at a meeting before, and you've never seen it before. And something's going to happen on this next call, and it's never happened on a call before. And something's going to be in the next CD that's never been in a CD before. And there's got to be a next. And next year, something's going to be different. All my coaching programs have changed some way every year. Little, but every year. Why? Because if you leave it the same, then everybody thinks, I've already been there, done that. So something's got to be different. In Weight Watchers business, the point thing is the thing they've gone with the longest. They're into a third year of using the points, although they've changed how you use the points every year. Prior to that, it was a new thing every year. So there was the free day deal where one day a week you could eat all the crap you wanted to and it didn't count, but you had to follow the plan the other 6 days. That was a year. Then there was the pick a bad food year. They have better names for it, you understand. But so there was the pick a bad food year. So you could pick one really crappy food, and it didn't count. You could eat any of that you wanted to, whenever you wanted to, as much of it as you wanted to, as long as you followed the rest of the program. So one person picked chocolate cake, the other person picked pizza. Everybody comes to the meeting. Don't make any difference. By the way, from a diet standpoint, it doesn't make any difference. It's controlling the numbers. It doesn't matter how you get to the numbers. Now they got this point deal, and if you're around Weight Watchers, people see they don't have to count calories now. They don't have to count fat grams. They don't have to count carbs. They just count Weight Watchers points, and everything is a point value. And so you can eat any damn thing you want to. You just got to make the points add up right at the end of the day. So Weight Watchers people are all, oh, well, I can have that even though it's 412 points because I didn't have this and it's 36 points. And they're all talking points. Okay? So there's a culture. But they got to change it every year. Okay? Otherwise, they can't keep people coming back and coming back and coming back. So there's got to be a what's next. And the what's next at least has to be a little different so everybody's sort of into what's going to happen. These are big. Your client or relationships, here's some big mistakes. First is being too familiar. It really does breed contempt. There has to be some mystery. You got to let them in, but you can only let them in so far. The minute they think they got it all, the minute they think they know everything you know, have heard everything you have to say, seen everything you know how to do, they're gone. Lose interest in you so fast, your head will spin. So you got to be careful what you let them see and what you don't let them see. You got to be careful how much you let them hang out with you in environments where they see more and more of the real you, less and less of the carefully controlled, embellished, presented you. I saw a guy destroy a practice management business competing with ours at the time. A couple hundred doctors, each paying $30,000 to $50,000 for a 2-year program. He got a big boat. And he started taking them all out on the boat with him and letting them hang out on the weekend, 10, 20 at a time, come with me on the boat. Well, they loved it. The only problem is, he and his wife got along I don't know, Bill O'Reilly and the biggest liberal you can think of. And they fought like cats and dogs the entire time they were on the boat. And they fought unpleasantly. Her more than him, but, you know, a lot of foul language and throwing stuff and bringing up what you did to me 16 years ago with so-and-so, you bastard, that sort of thing. And of course, you don't go out on a boat for 2 days without booze. So now you've added alcohol to this formula, which is not such a good formula. And so he was now, you know, seen in a pretty ugly, unpleasant, powerless light. It only took a couple boat trips. 20, 25 people total. They all talked to each other. Spread like wildfire. Doctors dropping out left and right. Whole program was over in 6 months, and he was back in practice. All right. Too familiar. Too familiar. There's a way to use that boat, but that ain't the way to use that boat. Bigger one, being friends. That's not what they are, even if you would like to be. You lose power through friendship. You don't gain it. The only people in your life that you have less power over than your friends are your family. Your family you have almost no power over. Even the ones you're supporting. Well, you all got one. You all got one. At least one, don't you? Who you're outright supporting. Well, for fun and giggles, go home and try and get them to do something. Anything. Try and get them to read Think and Grow Rich. Go ahead. Have at it. Won't happen. All right? So you lose power through friendship for a variety of reasons. Friends, for example, understandably feel they ought to get stuff for free. We're friends. If you're my buddy, you know, and we hang out together and you use my lawnmower and I stay at your cabin and et cetera, it's just sort of awkward and inappropriate, isn't it, to charge that person for advice when they come to you for advice about their business? It's a little awkward to charge them $10,000 to come to a seminar if they're your buddy and you guys go fishing together 4 times a year and your spouses go to the spa together and doesn't fit. The other thing is you really can't be a good coach to a friend because we lie like dogs to our friends. We're not willing to offend them. We're careful about what we say to them. Every friendship you've got a whole little mental list in your head of places we don't go, things we don't say to one another, topics we don't broach, truths we don't tell. If you have any kind of a lengthy friendship, you've rewritten history at least 6 times in it by unstated implicit agreement, or you wouldn't still be friends. Well, if you're going to effectively deal with a client or you're going to effectively be a coach to somebody, you can't be doing that stuff. You got to pretty much tell them the truth. So the friendship is an enormous barrier to sustaining these relationships. So you cannot cross this line. You can be friendly. You want to be friendly. You cannot really be friends. So let's take, in my case, let's take Ron LeGrand. Ron and I have known each other for, 25 years. Done business together for 25 years. I genuinely and sincerely like Ron. Okay? I turn down all social invitations. I'd actually like to go. Can't. Not unless I'm willing to change the whole relationship. Can't do it. Because in 12 months, the whole relationship will have changed. So as much as I might like to go play golf with that guy once a week, not if he's in my coaching group. Can't do it. Now, occasionally, it's worth doing. But understand what you're doing and go ahead and change the relationship. Don't kid yourself. Don't kid the other person. Don't fool anybody. We're now friends. And now all the rules have changed. Real hard to impose rules on friends. Familiarity and friendship. Mark Victor Hansen hasn't given me any money in 25 years. Got a little bit of money from him 25 years ago. Hadn't given me any money in 25 years. Isn't going to give me any money. It would benefit him enormously to give me some money. Isn't going to give me any money. Too familiar. Friends. Not day to day, go to the hamburger joint together friends, but friends. Phone calls just to talk. Send stuff to each other just to get an opinion. Too familiar. Know each other too well. Know every wart. In both directions. Not going to give me any money. Damn sure isn't going to give me the kind of money I get now. Impossible. Zig Ziglar. Never given me any money. Too familiar. Benefit him enormously to give me money. Never going to give me any money. About the only 2 I can think of. But there they are. And so if you let this happen, it will preclude consulting and coaching relationships with someone, and you should not waste your time taking somebody who you have an enormous friendship relationship with or an enormous amount of familiarity with and putting them into a coaching or a consulting relationship because you ain't going to be able to keep control of them. And if you got them in there, you can't let it change to this unless you are willing to consciously deliberately make the change. But don't think you can walk the tightrope, because you can't. So some tips. Restrict and carefully control social interaction. Politely decline most social invitations. And if you do socialize, socialize with them as a group, not individually. So if you really like people in your coaching group, great. You all want to go bowling together on Wednesday night? Terrific. But go as a group. Don't go with one of them. Don't go with two of them. All right? Avoid obligation at all costs. You want people obligated to you. You do not want to be obligated to them. Age-old advice about money. Same advice applies about obligation in general. My challenge is to have everybody who pays me a lot of money still feel, over and above the money they pay me, that they owe me, they are obligated to me, and that I can call upon them for all manner of favors and assistance and free work and support, and they still don't feel like they've discharged the obligation. The second part of that trick is for them to feel I owe them nothing. Now, it's easy to control my feelings, by the way. It's very hard to obligate me emotionally. But I can't have them thinking it either. It cannot be in their head. Right? This does not happen by accident. This happens by giving this thought. Mm-hmm. So, for example, somebody said when we were talking about they can't pay you enough, right? So let's say somebody's just paid $100,000 for a project, and I now deliver the work product of the project. I want to make sure that they know that I set aside something else I could have done that I would have made $200,000 from, or I stayed up all night in order to get it done, or here's the here's what you paid for, but here's the extra 4 things. I went above and beyond. And then if the project works and the project makes the money, I want to remind them, hey, and sometimes I'll do it jokingly, sometimes I'll do it in fun, but I want to be reminding them, $2 million last year. Guess I should have charged you more. I do it a lot. What am I really doing? I'm building up the obligation side of the ledger. Want them obligated to me, I don't want them obligated to them. If you accept gifts and courtesies, do it rarely, carefully, and always with caveats stated. The bigger the gift, the more important it is to have the conversation. All right? And they will start giving you gifts. If you're single and they bake for you, not a big deal. If you're single and they buy you a house equipped with a wife and a cook, big deal. Okay? Got to have a conversation about that. Okay? I had a longtime client this year give me a car. I don't need a car. I can buy a car. I didn't even really want the car. I was happy with the car I had. But for a variety of reasons, he needed to give me the car. And I appreciate the gesture. But I declined once. Then I had a long conversation stating the caveats, redefining the relationship, exempting the gift from the relationship, and then I paper trailed the conversation. We'll talk about paper trail later. Because I don't want it to be the most expensive free car I ever got. Always pick up tabs. Okay? Except in a situation where it is understood ahead of time. Okay? Otherwise, always be the guy who reaches for your wallet. It's a real important behavior. It's symbolic. It says huge things about you. And for God's sakes, in front of a client, don't use the calculator on your watch to figure out the 15.2% tip. Believe me, I've seen them do it. I've seen people do it. I've seen deals blown over the observation of this one behavior. I've seen it happen. Big mistake.